How are you today?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Thank you so much for agreeing to be interviewed for Taboo.
Thank you for having me.
This is another episode of Taboo, where we aim to talk about medical conditions that are not talked enough in order to raise awareness, comfort others who might be going through the same thing, and educate all of us. And today I am joined by the lovely Tito, and we are going to be talking all about sickle cell. So, Tito, introduce yourself.
So my name is Tito. I am 24. I work in property, and yeah, I have sickle cell anemia. And I've just been working to raise awareness for the condition.
Yeah. And yeah, so you actually run like an amazing page called Her Sickle Journey, and I'm going to be leaving all those details below, and we're going to be talking more about that today. I know that it's a real inspiration to lots of people, and hopefully this interview can help some more people as well.
Hopefully.
So we'll just firstly start off by saying the scientific definition of what sickle cell is. Okay, so sickle cell is a genetic blood disorder which changes the shape of our red blood cells. These are the cells that carry oxygen around the body. So it changes them, and that means the oxygen can't be transported around the body as well. And sometimes this can lead to painful episodes called crises, which commonly happen in the chest, limbs, and bones. And sometimes these differently shaped cells can also clot together and cause more serious problems such as strokes, eye problems, and more. So it can affect all races, but sickle cell anemia affects Black people disproportionately. 14,000 people are living with sickle cell disease in the UK. Yep. And it can also increase your risk of infection because it can disrupt blood flow to the spleen, which is the organ for fighting infection. So that is the scientific definition. But Tito, if you could tell us a more personal one.
So sickle cell is a condition of the blood, meaning literally anywhere where your blood touches can be affected. So the way it was described to me when I was younger, I think it was cold outside, and I was telling a girl that I couldn't go outside, so I was asking her to stay inside with me. She was like, why? And I was like, oh, because I have sickle cell. She was like, what's that? I said, I don't know. And then my teacher overheard it. She was like, oh, it's when your blood cells, as opposed to them being like circular, they're like a crescent shape, meaning that they can stick together more easily. And if, for example, it's too cold, or if you're too tired, or if you do something to aggravate it, it can stick together. So that's why I can go out to play. And yeah, it makes you really tired because, again, as opposed to your blood cells being like this, they're like this and they can't carry as much oxygen.
When did you first find out that you had sickle cell?
So I've always known. So my parents knew that they're both carriers.
Okay.
They tested for sickle cell while my mum was still pregnant with me.
Okay.
I've always known. It was just a thing of, it wasn't really spoken about in my house, not too much. And I knew I had sickle cell. I knew I had something because I had appointments. Every like 5 minutes, it was Tito, go and drink water, because I knew what I had to do to look after myself, but I wasn't entirely sure why. It only really started to register when I had to like kind of take the care into my own hands. So as I got older, then I kind of understood why I was doing something and the benefits of that.
Okay. And do you have any siblings?
Yeah, so I have a younger brother and a younger sister. None of them have sickle cell, but my sister's a carrier.
Okay. Fine. All right then. So you were the only one that had sickle cell in your family, the immediate or extended. You said, yeah. Did affect your day-to-day life because you had to take precautions, but when was the first time you had a crisis?
I can't remember the first time, but I do know that it was while I was really young.
Okay.
My parents would take me to like the hospital. I remember being young, just being like carried to the car. Yeah, I was pretty familiar with the hospital and the setting and like how things worked in a sense. The youngest that I remember me being taken to the hospital because of a crisis would be like maybe when I was like 6 or 7.
Or whichever first encounter with healthcare you can remember clearly. What was that like?
It was okay. I guess I just kind of associated it with like injections, and that's the main reason why I hated going to the hospital, because I knew I'd get a cannula. and I just hated the idea of like injections in general, the numbing cream and all of that. So that's like my first memory, or first like main thing that I associated with the hospital.
Okay. And so at what age did you have to now, as you say, take sickle cell into your own hands?
I guess mainly when I went to secondary school, where I guess it wasn't really my parents writing into my teachers. It was more of like me saying, okay, let's say for example in PE, if something was a bit too much for me, I'd have to be the one to my teacher, I listen, like I'm not able to do this, and this is why. Especially when it came to like colder weather as well.
Yeah.
Again, just making sure that I wasn't too exposed to the cold, making sure that I'm just drinking enough fluids and stuff like that. So it gets to a point where your parents have to stop nagging you, and you just have to like do it because it's best for you.
Yeah. And just so for the viewers, so in terms of preventing a crisis, which is part of the treatment, what we do is we avoid overexertion, stay hydrated, and avoid quick changes in temperatures, especially the cold. Any other triggers that you can think of you have to avoid?
Stress. That's one thing that I realized when I was in my last year at uni, that stress was a big trigger for me. So when I had like my coursework, my dissertation, my exam to revise for, I was in and out of hospital, and I was thinking like, what's going on? And then one of the nurses was like, maybe stress is like triggering these crises. So yeah, that's my biggest trigger.
One viewer has asked, does it affect you on a day-to-day basis? And has asked specifically about uni. So
I think it's more of like just knowing, I guess once you know your triggers, then you're able to take steps to prevent them. So at that time, I didn't know that stress was such a big thing. And then I would be spending like the majority of my day in the library, like constantly doing work and just not really breaking it up the way I would have if I knew.
mm,
Um, if I knew, yeah, I would space out my work a bit more, plan in advance. I would even like, if I could, maybe ask for extensions before it was suddenly like needed. So let's say, for example, I had a crisis, I would then be trying to like message my tutor or my lecturer, oh, can I get an extension? But if I can plan ahead and say like I may need extra time because of the sheer amount of work I have, then I would have done that as well. And just making sure that I ate properly and I had enough water, because again during those times we were just so stressed, you're not really focusing about the other things, but they are just as important, just making sure that you're as healthy as possible.
I always find it interesting how when we're stressed, sometimes we don't register it, but our body always
Mm,
tells us slow down. And then
yeah.
it's only when we're forced to slow down that we do. So it just shows how much stress can have an impact on your body to the point that it can even change your blood to make
Mm-mm.
it more prone to sickling. Okay, so you would say to any person who it maybe is who has sickle cell and is at uni to make sure to get extra time in before the crisis happens,
Yeah,
and to split up their day and split up their workload as much as possible.
yeah, definitely.
And another part of the treatment is also blood transfusions to help with the fatigue. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Maybe around like May last year, I started having problems like with my vision. I started getting retinal migraines where like the vision in my left eye just suddenly went, and then I would get a migraine lasting hours or even days. So I remember the first time it happened, I was like rushed to hospital, and then they did like an MRI scan, a CT scan, like all the scans possible, and then they found out that in the past I've had a few infarcts, so a few silent strokes. And then suddenly after that, my care plan changed completely. So I used to use a medication called hydroxyurea, but instead of using that, I now have transfusions every 6 weeks. It's a red cell exchange transfusion where they're giving me blood at the same time they're taking out my blood. I have transfusions now every 6 weeks, just to make sure that the risk of a stroke happening with very serious consequences is reduced as much as possible.
What is that like? How, does it interfere with your life?
It's okay. So before lockdown, it was every 4 weeks. That was like the maximum amount of time. Like they wanted to just make sure that they were on job with it. But then because of lockdown and everything, they've had to kind of reduce the frequency just because of like space and the practical sides of things. And then I just like felt like the 4 weeks, like after doing this every 6 weeks, I felt like that was fine. And I felt like the 4 weeks was a bit excessive. And then also because of like the scars that I get on my arms as well, I kind of wanted to reduce the number of times that I did have the transfusions. So then I did ask them if it was okay for it to be moved to every 6 weeks as opposed to every 4 weeks, and that was fine. And I feel like I've been very fortunate in a sense where with my work, they've been really understanding. So they give me that day off. So even when it was every 4 weeks, my workplace gave me that day off. So that because afterwards I'd have the transfusion in the morning, and then afterwards I'd feel so like lethargic.
Really?
Um, yeah, it's just so tired. And then I guess like the next couple of days, then my energy starts to get back, get up. It doesn't really interfere too much. I guess it's just making sure that I know when I'm having it in advance and just planning my day accordingly, basically.
Okay. And so you mentioned about how COVID kind of changed things, and somebody has asked, like, what precautions have you been taking? Because as we mentioned before, sickle cell can increase your risk of catching infections. So what precautions have you been taking?
So I was shielding since March.
Okay.
It got to a point where I was just like to my manager that I don't feel safe coming into the office. So even before like the whole furlough scheme was announced, I was just like, okay, yeah, no. And then the first time that I left my house that wasn't for an appointment was maybe like the end of August. And when I do have to go out, it's the mask, it's to stay in so far away from everybody. I have hand sanitizer. I've been having hand sanitizer in my bag anyway. When I go out, yeah, I don't touch anything. I try not to touch anything. And then when I get back home, literally everything, all my like my phone, my AirPods, my wallet, like I'm disinfecting it all. I'm going into the shower, I'm washing all my clothes, just making sure that I can do everything I can to minimize me catching anything.
You said that from March to August, you only went out for appointments. What about, was shopping centers knock off? You didn't go to do the grocery shopping?
I think I was harder on myself than anyone else was. So like even my parents, like they were a bit more lenient. They were the ones going out to do the food shops and stuff like that. I think I was on edge until I left in August. I had to leave the house to run an errand that only I could do. And then I kind of started to get more comfortable with the idea of leaving the house.
And you said that you were on edge. So do you feel like having sickle cell, or if in any way affected your mental health?
It just makes it makes you more anxious. You worry about things which people your age don't really have to worry about. Even now, like just in general with life and just having a condition like sickle cell, you have to think in advance. So for example, with work, I'm thinking now that I need to start making plans so that in however many years I don't have to work a typical 9 to 5. Because eventually, like typically as you get older, people with sickle cell, their health kind of worsens. And I don't want to have to be in the position where I'm so reliant on work that I have to go in and in a sense sacrifice my state of health.
Okay. And so you're obviously in the hospital a lot, with appointments a lot. What are your interactions with healthcare professionals like?
It's fine, I guess. So I have my hematologist. I feel like with her, it's more of so now that I've started having the transfusions, the appointments have been less frequent because they really do help in terms of keeping me as healthy as possible. Yeah, I have a physio that I would speak to because another thing that people with sickle cell deal with is chronic pain. So the physio is there to help with anything like that, ways to just to live with it and make it more bearable in a sense. Nurses, doctors, like, it's all fine. I have no complaints. But actually, I just wish that there would be like more Black people who were working with sickle cell patients, because that way I feel like it's more relatable. Or like, I just personally feel like when I have someone who's Black who's working with me in like in a hospital, I feel like they look out for me that bit more. And they
Okay.
take me bit more seriously. But yeah, besides that, like everything's fine when it comes to like my interactions with them.
Okay, yeah, so definitely representation matters.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's helpful for our patients. You feel like you're a little bit more looked out for. I know that a lot of, whilst I was doing my research and everything, I know a lot of sickle cell patients during crises can
Mm.
sometimes come up against healthcare professionals who feel like their pain is not taken their pain is not taken seriously.
Yeah,
Has that
definitely.
ever been the case for you or any of your followers or anything?
Yeah, so I went to university in Leicester, and I feel like in places like Leicester where there aren't as many Black people as London, they're a bit more hesitant when it comes to sickle cell patients. So I remember once I went to A&E and I was just in so much pain. And for me, like if I feel so much pain that I have to go to A&E, that means that I'm ready to be admitted for at least a week. Like I've tried my best at home and I'm just saying, listen, I need all the strong everything, like look after me. But I remember they discharged me. They didn't even admit me. They just let me go in A&E. And I was thinking, wait, hold on a second. Like, if I'm here, that means it's serious. So I had to go back to them and be like, I'm not going home and you guys need to get a bed for me. I just feel like stuff like that, like just being second guessed, it's a bit insulting in a sense. Like it makes it feel as if like they know better, which they don't. They haven't had to deal with this condition. I think there was even an instance where I was like asking for a stronger painkiller, so oral morphine, to take home with me. And I remember I was asking for like months, and like they're so hesitant. Fair enough, it's a strong medication, but I know how to use such medicine. They're worried that people with sickle cell will become addicted to such things, but I guess it depends on the person, as opposed to just generalizing to everyone with sickle cell. Look
Mm,
at the individual cases,
yeah,
and yeah, and just try and make it work through that, as opposed to just saying a flat out no. So yeah, I was begging for that for like months, and they eventually gave it to me to take home, but that was just a battle that was unnecessary, to be honest.
necessary, especially as you're already dealing with some. But
Mm.
I think that you would know the risks and benefits. And as you said, you're more of an expert of your own body. I think that's really important on board when if they ever see sickle cell in the future. So you said that when you were younger, in your family, you didn't really speak much about your sickle cell. Tell us more about that. Why do you think that is?
So yeah, I feel like from young it's been very like hush hush. The people who know about my health were purely on a need to know basis. I feel like with my parents, they're very peculiar particular about the language used when it came to describing my health. So as opposed to saying that I have sickle cell, they were like, oh, just say that you're registered as a sickle cell patient. So for them, it was more of a thing of like they didn't want me to claim it. That's like a lot of like an African mentality in a sense. But yeah, and it was like as I was growing older, I realized that a lot of people around me were affected by sickle cell. They knew someone with it or they had it themselves, and it just amazed me how like I didn't know until a certain point. I guess maybe it's the thing where they were either like upset about it or just maybe embarrassed or something like that. But it just wasn't talked about at all, and I'm not entirely sure why. I actually even asked them, to be honest, to find out like why were they so secretive into it. I feel like the more people who know, it's much better. Like more people can help you if there is an emergency, or more people will be aware that okay, yes, I need to get my genotype checked. Nothing bad will happen from talking about it, in my opinion.
And that is why we have this series Taboo, and why you have your page Her Sickle Journey, because so many people are going through things, but we're all going through it silently.
Mhm.
Things only remain taboo if we don't speak about them, so we just need to make sure that we are.
Like everyone is going through something. Everyone has some sort of battle or something that they're trying to like overcome. And I just feel like me being in the position I'm in, so me having the help that I have, I've been able to then create a platform that's gone on to help so many other people. So fair enough, like I wouldn't wish this upon anybody. But from me having it again, I've been able to help so many people. And I feel like that kind of is like intertwined with like my purpose. And I feel really fulfilled from doing such things.
And one mum has actually written in and she said that her 8-year-old, let me get that up. So, how can I support my 8-year-old daughter who's been diagnosed with sickle cell and says that she overheard her in the other room saying that she hates sickle cell.
Mm.
What say?
Um, I would say like have an open conversation at first. In my house growing up, it was very again hush hush. So any feelings I had about my health that was very like internal, and I had to deal with it myself in a sense. I wasn't really, I didn't really want to bother anyone and speak to like my parents, or I didn't want them to feel like I'm blaming them. Um, but yeah, I'd say definitely like, sit her down and just speak to her about her feelings and just find ways to process it, like healthier ways to process it. Just I feel like if we're being realistic, then that just helps a lot. Being transparent. Um, Parents eventually children start to realize that our parents don't know it all. Our parents are just human. So we're not always looking to you for answers. It's more of just we want you to understand where we're coming from. So yeah, I would say just have that open discussion about her health, and just let her know, just remind her that you are there for her. Um, One thing I remember, I write articles about sickle cell, and then one thing I wrote about recently was just like a letter to parents in a sense where if they have a child with sickle cell, just don't be upset about it. Don't think that the child will now suddenly hate you because of it. It's just more, again, just talking to them, being open with them, and just being there for them.
I'll be linking all of your socials and your blogs down there. So definitely if you're the mum that is watching this or any parent, then just click on that. Be always comfortable with it. How did
Mm.
you manage to become comfortable?
So I started all of this from a blog, and when I started the blog, I started it maybe in like 2011, 2012. But at the time, it was anonymous, so I didn't want anyone knowing my condition. I didn't want anyone knowing it was me. I didn't like speaking about it. I didn't publicize it. I didn't share it anywhere. And then I stopped it. Maybe I did three posts and I forgot about it. And then when I went to university, and then I guess with the friends that I had around me, when they found out about my health, they were really encouraging me to share it more because I remember I had on like a whiteboard that I wanted to redo my blog, and they were like, "Oh, you have a blog?" I was like, "Yeah, I do." Talking about my health, and they were like, "Okay, cool. We're gonna hold you accountable." So they kind of pushed me to get it started again, and I started sharing again like 2016, 2017. But yeah, at first it was literally again on a need to know basis. I didn't want people knowing, but then I realized how much good it can do, and I was encouraged to start sharing. So yeah, that's how I started.
Wow. And apart from your blog, are there any groups, websites, or help centers that have helped you on your journey?
Um, I think mainly social media. So people all over the world who are dealing with sickle cell, who will ask questions, they will answer your questions, they will share. Like literally, whenever it's someone's birthday, they'll share, "Oh yeah, I'm 60 now." Everyone wish them happy birthday, and like just because like we all know like how the odds are kind of stacked against us, and we all just celebrate everything together. We share milestones, we encourage each other, and yeah, I think that's where like yeah, so I feel like things such as the groups on Facebook, they really just open your eyes to different bits of information, things that can help, like tips and tricks that you won't necessarily hear from your doctor, but this is from people who have lived through it. So yeah, I think that's
And it again just shows that how the people living through it, you are the experts in the condition. We know it from a scientific point of view, but you guys know it from a personal point of view. So the education and the learning can go both ways. So that is all the questions. Thank you so much. Do you have any last words?
um not really. I guess it's just like people who are watching this who do have sickle cell, just like keep going. Like, it could be worse, and life is a gift. So just again, keep going. And then also like to the people who don't know what sickle cell is or don't or know someone with it, just I feel like the best thing for you to do is just be educated.
They said that they are forever grateful to sisters like her sickle journey, as they're showing me that it's okay and I can still be and do whatever I want to be, even with the illness, regardless. So
Thank
that's what some of
you.
you are doing. So you
uh,
are completely making way. And tell everybody where they can find you.
So it's at Her Sickle Journey on Instagram, at Her Sickle J on Twitter, and yeah, I think from there you'd be able to find like all the other links, like my blog posts and stuff like that.
If you've learned anything new, then make sure you comment down below. If you or anybody else is on this sickle cell journey as well, then comment and share this video. It might help somebody else as well with sickle cell, or who knows, a loved one with sickle cell. And we'll see you in the next one. Thank you, Tito.
Thank you so much.